titled Failure, the Ultimate Master, which will be featured with Barbara von Landestein, business psychologist, and Michael Chaffee, CEO at Wolf Summit. So I welcome you on stage. Please, round of applause.
So thank you for introducing us. It's actually a dialogue, I think we will have, right? An intimate dialogue is the idea.
Fireside.
Okay, a fireside. So Mike, we met about 6 months ago, and we recently started working together in a circle I host for visionary founders all around the world. And once a month, we talk to each other and share stories, share our vulnerabilities, questions we have. And last month, you were in the middle of this circle, right? And we had an amazing talk, I think. You shared a lot about your journey, about your vulnerabilities, the things that happened on your path. But it was also quite intense. We had some moments even that we had to be silent so you could catch your breath and take a moment. Then you called me last week and you said, I want to share my story on stage as well, which I think is really brave that you want to do that. Igniting others, even some of your loved ones here in the audience as well. So I wanted to ask you first, what made you decide to bring your story here on stage today?
So after the circle that we had, which was, completely mind-blowing, and I was surprised with how I reacted when I was with these fellow entrepreneurs from around the world, and just to see how it impacted them. Yeah, and how I could just feel that there was a connection and there was a relation to the pain that is going through many founders here today and equally worldwide. And I saw that raw power of example and of experience and storytelling. And that's when I reached out to you to discuss this fireside chat that we have now.
Right. So there's a lot of power, right, in sharing vulnerabilities, doubts. And you decided to call it Failure, the Ultimate Master.
Yep.
How do you come up with that?
So the meaning behind the title is that the takeaway is that what seems at the time as a huge failure, and just to give you the gravity of the failure this was for me, many of my team don't even know my history and my past, business partners. It was something that I couldn't talk about for so long.
Right. And then you did at a circle. Something similar happened, and you already thought maybe it would happen today, and that's perfectly fine, right? To be emotional about something, because you've got an amazing story, and you've got a lot to share.
But on the Zoom call, I can turn the camera off and the microphone. It's quite a positive.
Yes, I understand.
So yeah, it was. For many years, I held it as as baggage that I didn't want to talk about. Just because of how much of a shame it was for me for many years. But the feeling of sharing it with the circle, it took it was like a huge relief. As I said to you when I came back from the 10-minute break, with the teary-eyed, it was something I can't explain. Just letting all of that pain and guilt and shame come out was amazing. So basically, for the crowd here, already, when I was 15 years and 9 months, I enlisted into the Royal Marines Commandos. It was a dream, a vision that I had of my life from the age of 13. So.
Yes.
At the age of 13, I was at the county level swimmer, and every training session, I would go into the pool, and every lap would be visualizing finishing the training program on Dartmoor, on the southwest of the UK. So I pictured myself, visualized that, receiving the Green Beret, and that was for 4 years. That was my dream. So at 15 years and 9 months, I went to Kensington Armed Forces Recruitment Office. I signed up, passed the initial aptitude tests, which were pull-ups, press-ups, and some running, flying colours. And then the next step on the journey was to go down to Lympstone, to Devon, where you take part in a potential Royal Marines course. And essentially that's where you get, you go on the bottom field, you do the obstacle courses, you do the assault course, and then you either pass or fail. So again, I was like at the age of 16, because the earliest you can join was 16 years old. So I was fighting fit, passed it with flying colours. A few months later, came back to Lympstone, and then started the commando training course. So as you'd expect, it does what it says on the tin. It's pretty arduous. I was going well for the first 2 to 3 months. Started getting into trouble around the 3-month mark. So the program, the course is 8 months long in total. So at 3 months, I started to struggle. Started slowing down on the marches, getting pulled through by my comrades and teammates. And then there was a period when I went home to my mum for 2 weeks for the Easter leave. And I had a great time at home. And I came back to Devon, to Lympstone, to the centre. I remember getting off the train, and then you go to the guardhouse, check in with your ID. And I was the first guy back into F block. So it's lots of apartment blocks in the training centre. And I remember going up the stairs, and I was the first one back in the room, and I just dropped my bags, and my heart just sank. That feeling of despair, that I don't want to be here. Everything to my core said, I don't want to be here. So it was 3 months, around the 14-week mark. So I staggered on for 2 or 3 weeks more, not doing particularly well in the aptitude tests. And it got to the point where I missed one of the speed marches. So it was, I had to either, basically I had to go back 2 weeks to join the next troop of guys coming through. And the bruising on my ego was so much that, my inner rebel was like, fuck it. I'm done. This is bollocks. I'm not gonna go back with the shame and the embarrassment of having to join another group of men. And I decided to speak to the commanding officer and told him that, look, thanks very much, I want to leave. So went to the commanding officer's office. Mum was dialed in on the telephone, and it's, oh, Mrs. Chaffee, your son has requested to leave. How do you feel about that? And she was, okay, understand, it's a shame. And I left, and there was relief. I remember taking my bags up to the guardhouse to check out, and one of the guys who was a few weeks ahead of me, and he just passed out and received his Green Beret, he's like, Mike, what are you doing? You're 70% of the way there. And nobody could tell me anything. In the troop there was a corporal, and he took me aside and said, look, Mike, it's not how long it takes you to get the Green Beret, it's getting the Green Beret. So still, I was blinkers, ego, pride. I was like, God, fuck it, done. So that was that. I was 16 years and a half, came back to the UK, came back to London, sorry. So I came back to live with my mum, started a load of odd jobs. I worked as a motorcycle courier for a while, delivering packages all around London. Very, exciting, dangerous job, but some building work, just a general casual work, but my life was going nowhere. I gained a lot of weight. I went from 70 kilos to 120 within the next 3 years. Okay, so it was I just hated everything about me.
Yes. Mm. So what you're sharing is you were very determined. You shared that with me before. getting into the army. You even showed a picture here of you. And then after 6 months, you decided to go out, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And you started an all new journey, but your pride was hurt as well. So on your journey, where you are right now, a lot of things happened. You gained weight, and you started to resolve that, right? So you share with me, you started a boxing training camp, and again, what I could tell is very determined. You started to resolve things again.
Exactly.
How did it work out for you?
So it got to the point in London, in the lifestyle I had of heavy parties, you know, not really doing anything in life. I just decided I had to get away from it. So I booked a flight from London to Oslo, and that was the only flight I would take for the next 9 months between Oslo to Singapore. So I went overland, went across the Nordics, went into Estonia, trained to St. Petersburg, Moscow, all of Siberia, spent a month in the Mongolian desert, down through China, into Hong Kong, Macau, Southeast Asia, and then I checked into a Thai Muay boxing camp. And I decided that I wasn't going home until I changed. So big, hugely obese guy, 130 kilos. I dropped down to 75, 80 kilos in 4 months.
Wow.
You know, every morning was like 30-kilometer runs, pad work for hours. And the man that came back, to give you an idea, my best friends from the UK, from London, they picked me up from the airport, and the look on their faces like ghosts. They're like, "What was that?" You know,
Yeah.
it went from, you know, a wow to, you know, to a snake coming back.
Right. So if you set your mind on things, you go full 100%, right? But you changed a lot as well on your course. So at what moment did you find your mission as being an entrepreneur on your journey that you just described?
So I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I had 3 paper rounds from the age of 9. So every morning I would do 2 paper rounds before school. And then once a week on Wednesdays, I would do another round. So I'd get around £60 a week, and that I used to, you know, use for bits and pieces. Where I grew up in the UK, just outside of London, wasn't the most pleasant of areas. We had a large gypsy camp that was at the top of our housing estate. So every few weeks or a couple of months, while I had a paper trolley, you know, stacked with papers, 2 or 3 of the local younger gypsy kids would come, and we'd scrap, and they'd try and steal the papers, and it was, you know, it was like a merry-go-round. Okay,
Right.
And at some point, once I, you know, really made a stand, it stopped, but it was.
Okay, so you started at an early age, and while traveling, learning a lot, I guess, from your travels and all the challenges you had. At one point, you found your mission in life, which is driving you as well as CEO of the Wolf Summit right now. Can you share a little bit about that story?
So yeah, essentially I was, when I came back from my, you know, say pilgrimage or sabbatical around the world, I'd met during my time at the boxing camp some oil and gas workers, okay? So these were English guys living in southern Thailand, and they was like, "Oh, Mike, you should go and train as a diver. Money's amazing, $500 to $1,000 a day, tax-free, seeing the world." I was sold on that dream. So I flew back from Singapore, saw my friends and family for a few days, went straight to Scotland, and then trained to be a commercial diver. So essentially working around the world on oil platforms and vessels, either inspecting infrastructure or installing new infrastructure. So that was in, say, 2007, 2008. So I finished the training in Scotland, came back out to Singapore, was hunting around, you know, looking for work, which wasn't so easy as a brand new diver. Flew over to Dubai, where I managed to bag a job, you know, straight away. Wasn't the best paid option, but for a new diver, it was good. $165 a day, which at 21 is, you know, considering you go for 60 to 90 days and you cannot spend the money because everything's laid on, you come back with a packet of cash. And I spent the next few years having a great time across Asia, Middle East, and even ended up in Ukraine at some point for 2 years.
Right. So meeting a lot of people, having a lot of experiences as well. And then you decided to stop with the diving.
Yeah.
What
so
made you stop?
So the catalyst to make me stop was the arrival of my youngest child. So
Your daughter, right? She's here today?
my daughter was here in the crowd, and
Yes.
because, you know, I missed so many years of her life when I was working, you
Right.
know, in the oil and gas industry, I didn't want that to happen again with my son.
Right. And so in sharing your story, you show a lot of emotions, right? You're emotional, you knew that you would be. Are you facing some kind of darker side within you, or maybe a shadow, something you feel sorry about or regret in sharing this story?
Sharing this right now?
Yes?
No, not at all.
No?
It's, you know, as I said during our, you know, circle, it was just such a relief to have it all out.
Right.
And the reason that I really wanted to bring this into the light of the conference is because the message to founders that are going through hell, I mean, there are a small percentage of you which will be, you know, business will be going great, but I think the majority of us at the moment, times are difficult. And the real takeaway that I want people to remember from this fireside is that what may feel like a, you know, life-destroying failure at the time is merely just turning a page in the book of your life.
Okay. So what did it bring you? If you look at the failures like you described them, it's a page turning. What's on the page? What did it bring you as a person, as a father, as a founder, as a friend? How did you learn from your failures?
So it all came rushing back to me, you know, as I said, it took me many years to come to terms with, you know,
Yes.
not finishing the commando course. And then with the onset of COVID, you know, there was that same feeling of helplessness. Everything was completely out of our control. You know, business was fighting for revenue, you know, team needed to be paid, and everything was just so difficult. And for love nor money, I couldn't escape my own head for days on end. I couldn't sleep. It was, you know, it felt like your skin was on fire at times.
Right.
So I took myself luckily in Wrocław we have great mountain ranges within a couple of hours. So I used to take myself off to Śnieżka, for example. So I'd go there for the weekend, and I didn't share this with people. You know, part of me was thinking, okay, let's just find a, you know, convenient cliff to accidentally fall off of. And basically what happened on the way up the mountains, sweating, pumping, endorphins started rushing, you know, and I got to the top and ended up feeling brand new, you know.
Right. So the same like you were determined as a young boy to go into the army, you were also very determined in facing your own troubles or challenges or shadows. And while you do, and you did it in circle, and again, you do it today, you feel relief. How is that so important for you to share today with founders here? And why do you think it can help them in building their business, but also managing and enjoying their private life? Getting in touch with this pain.
Yeah, because it's although it seems whenever you run your own business, it feels as though there's nothing outside of your business. But the truth is, there's a world out there. You know, there's people, your family members, your kids, partners, that are all suffering if you are completely occupied with your business.
Right.
You know, along my journey, as I shared with you, I started using psychedelics in 2020. So now, check mountain ranges, you know, in the mountain lakes, swimming, you know, just completely surrendering to nature for a few hours was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. It was just like turning off all of the racing thoughts, and I would come back to work the next week, revitalized, recharged, and feeling ready to take on the world, you know.
Right.
So if anybody hiked up Mount Śnieżka during June or July of 2020 and heard Elton John in the distance, that was probably me naked in a lake.
But that's a good one, right? Going into silence, taking some time, not working all the time, but taking yourself into account. That's very important, right?
Yeah.
So what is your most important lesson you would like to share with the founders here today, or maybe at home that are listening, when you start building your business, expanding it, consolidating it, maybe one time wanting to step back as well? What is a very important lesson for you to share with these founders?
So essentially there's, three things which I would, suggest to any founders. First one is to be selfish. Now, I don't want this to be in the negative sense, but be selfish in the sense that if you want to be the best leader for your team or the best, founder for investors, stakeholders, clients, partners, you're not going to do it if you haven't slept for days. If your lifestyle completely sucks, you're not going to be of any use to your team, your business partners, or anybody else. Okay, so be selfish. At the same time, be compassionate. So, when a new hire accidentally sends 50,000 people an email without a subject line, so what? I mean, it happens, yeah. You can't turn back time. You just, chalk it up, correct the action and move forward. And then thirdly, so that's be compassionate. Thirdly, I would say always keep your focus on the horizon. Okay, between here and the horizon of your business and your vision, there is a whole, journey. If you're preoccupied with the next few days, the next few weeks, next few months, even years, you're missing the bigger picture.
Right. And if I sum it up, I hear the word, or I feel the word, stay connected. Stay connected with you, with your soul, with your inner journey, as well as staying connected with your vision and your team. So to wrap this up, I think it would be beautiful to hear from you. How do you stay connected with the ones you love and also with your team or the people that are working with you? What is so important to you to have this daily connection with them, and how do you ignite them as a leader?
So, it starts with yourself always. So my morning begins at, say, 6 a.m. I wake up, do a coffee, run to my CrossFit box. So I'm a die-hard CrossFit athlete, not athlete, okay, but I enjoy it and I'm reasonably proficient. So I run to CrossFit, I finish CrossFit for an hour, I run back. So that's 90 minutes to 2 hours of physical exercise. The endorphins are going, feel absolutely brand new. And then, shower, get ready, head to the office. And I'm not a really, I believe anyway, I like to focus on working with my team, going for lunches, one-on-one time, being as available as possible for them. And that's how I feel. I prefer to think that, I lead through inspiration as opposed to direct, commanding orders, for example.
Right. So you're staying connected in that way, being authentic, being personal with your family, with your team, as well as with yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Authenticity is key. I mean,
Yeah.
in the world we live in at the moment, I think we're losing that authenticity as a society. We're in a period of conflict like we've never seen. So I think at the individual level, when we start en masse, being our authentic self, sharing vulnerability,
Right.
then we will see that multiply effects and spread.
Exactly. It's a very powerful source to be vulnerable, right? So if you bring this beautiful asset into the Wolf Summit and you look ahead for, let's say, about 5 years, where will the Wolf Summit be then, thinking about this kind of beautiful energy as well? What do you want to do with it?
So during my time when I traveled from Scandinavia to Estonia during my 9-month sabbatical, I took a ferry from Stockholm to Tallinn, okay? And it was the craziest ferry I've ever been on, bearing in mind after that I worked in the oil and gas industry for 11 years. There were fights, there was people making out on the dance floor, there was karaoke. It was like a crazy ferry. So I befriended an Estonian couple, okay, on the ferry. And they kindly took me to my hostel, which was in the old town of Tallinn, okay? So they dropped me off in Tallinn, and I remember with my big backpack walking up the street, the cobbled path, and up ahead, my hostel was on the left. And I could see this hippie with dreadlocks, and there was a man and two guys. Sorry, two men and a woman. And I heard this language that I'd never heard before. It was like harsh and sounded aggressive, and I slowly realized and suspected, oh, that sounds like Russian. So obviously I had all of these, this was 2007, I must say, so the year was 2007. So I approached closer and I saw that they were having a business discussion, and there was papers being exchanged between them, and I was like, goodness, this poor hippie, he's about to be ripped off. I was adamant that whatever was happening was, nefarious, okay? So the three Russians left, and the dreadlocked hippie he was actually the hostel owner. So he took me downstairs to reception to check in, and all I wanted to do was tell the poor guy that he's about to be, cheated or ripped off in some way. And I remember it, very clearly. I just asked him to start the conversation. I said, were they Russians? And he didn't say a word. He just stared at me for 3 seconds, and he put his hand on my shoulder. And he said 2 words, "They're human." And that hit me so hard, I couldn't, all of the things I wanted to tell him about, he needs to be careful, was like taken out of me. And I was, continued checking in. And, I didn't share with him what I felt, and it stayed with me for years, okay? Those 2 words and the stare he looked at me with. Now, how I use that experience today is that right now, I don't see Chinese programmers. I don't see American salespeople. I don't see Indian, developers, and I don't see Pakistani salespeople. I see a group of humans, okay? And I see people who I know from meeting so many people here, wonderful people. I see a group of humans that are invested and driven to make the world better. So if you ask me in 5 years' time where I hope to be, I hope to see more humans on the same mission.
Good. And see the human in you as well. This is about self-worth, right? Instead of stigmatizing people, it's about seeing them from who they are. And the best thing you can do is also show your own worth to other people, which you just did, I think, the past 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Barbara.
sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm a bit in an unusual position. The thing is, we still have a couple of minutes, so I was wondering maybe the audience would be so kind to help us out and still have those 5 minutes, keep them entertaining. Maybe you have the questions to Barbara, to Mike. That's an interesting life story being shared, right? I remember the first time when Mike told me about his life story, I was like, no way, dude, you're so successful and you went through all of that. I kind of get it now, or you know everything about everything. So it feels like, whenever I'm talking to you, you always have an answer for something. Not always the answer I like, personally, but that's because we have different experiences. So if I could ask my girls to get a couple of, perfect, thank you, a couple of mics, and maybe some of you would be so kind to me and my poor throat and help me out and maybe ask a question. All right, we have the first question here.
Thank you for the wonderful sharing and very deep and personal sharing. I really liked the last part when you mentioned about you see human regardless of race, background, and etc. But in this world right now, we are going through a very big polarization of, in one hand, we have a lot of people who are becoming a bit more inclusive and diverse. On the other side, we're becoming a lot more closed off. How do you, what's your advice on becoming more inclusive and doing our part to enable diversity in our work and in our place?
So I think it's, as I said earlier, it's being authentic, being patient with people around you. It really is so true that you have no idea what's going through another person's life. Many of the business partners I've met with, all they see is the big smiley guy, you know, excited, want to do business together. They don't know I haven't slept for 2 or 3 days, and I'm just, you know, running on vapors. So, as hard as it can be at some times, and with people that really don't deserve, in some cases, to have your patience, you need to have it, and be the beacon that you want to see reflected back to you.
I have a follow-up question on that. We've been going through a lot of things together. I've been in Wolf Summit for 2 years now. I left for some time, and I couldn't resist going back, seeing that smiley face, right? And I came back. So it's been quite a while for me working with Wolf Summit. At any point, doesn't have to be our corporation, but during Wolf Summit, was there a breaking point when you were like, you know what, I cannot see you as a human anymore because it's, you know, we don't get along. It's too tough for me.
When you mean within, like, in general?
Yeah, during our organization, there was some point when you were very, very close to kind of betraying your own values.
No, honestly, it's you know, and I can say this honestly, it's short of murdering, you know, somebody very close to me. There's not an awful lot I can't forgive or, you know, try and understand. Obviously, you know, a lot of characters are more challenging than others.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's we have quite a lot of discussions, but inside of the team. But you know, the thing that we always try to promote is in the discussion is where the truth lays. To be honest, so I think we have. Do we have the final results, girls, or not yet? Okay, perfect. So in that case, maybe no questions anymore. And thank you for being the star and saving my day, my throat. It's been a long day for me, long day for all of us, and you jumping in, the best thing that happened to me today. Thank you. All right, so we can finish this discussion because we are ready to go to the big announcement. So thank you so much, guys, and we'll be back in a minute.